come on. There we go. Hi, good evening, and welcome to our discussion this evening with the potential candidates for our City Council. My name's Tom Seidel, and I got volunteered again to be the moderator. So I'm getting ready to pass this on, by the way. So lots of good notes on how to do this, but it's my pleasure to be here to help us understand the positions and information from our City Council candidates. You'll notice that the candidates are in two groups on the dais. The folks on the left side here are competing for 2 full terms on City Council. The folks on the right side are competing for the fill on a vacancy on the City Council, and that's only 1 position. So 2 positions here, 1 position there. They will all be asked the same questions and have the same amount of time to answer those questions, and we'll go through those sequentially. I do have here a bowl with questions from the floor. We'll get to those at 8:30. If we don't get through all these through 8:30, so be it. If we get done early, I'll go back to the list of questions. I suspect we'll get through maybe half of the questions that were submitted online. So we'll see how that goes. The format will be as follows. Each City Council candidate will have 2.5 minutes to introduce themselves. We're going to start in last name alphabetical order, and then come on in, pull up a chair. Hi. So they'll get a chance to introduce themselves for 2.5 minutes. Then I will go through the list of questions that were submitted online. Those questions, there were 24 questions. I have numbered each one and then used the random number generator app on my phone, which is way too geeky, to have a random list of how we'll draw those questions out and ask the candidates. Again, we should get through close to half, maybe 10 to 12 of those questions. Let me see. Mayor Bruner is here.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Tom, and thank you, the candidates, for volunteering at this stage. It's an honor to serve as an elected official, and it's a big responsibility as well. And I appreciate everybody who's putting their name forward for that, and really just appreciate everybody's facilitation of this. Also want to thank Matt and Duncan, who are running our AV tonight. The city staff is here in an unofficial city event. This is traditionally something that we are helpful, to make sure that the residents can participate. So if you're not able to attend, you should be able to see the stream or download it later if there's somebody that you know that needs to watch it as you're making your considerations. So again, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And yes, they're in the closet back here somewhere. So that's a good thing. So we want to thank both Duncan and Matt. Also, please check all your cell phones to make sure those are in the silent mode. If you could all do that now, that'd be deeply appreciated. So, introductions, written questions, questions from the floor, and then each candidate will have the time for a closing statement. And again, your closing statements will have 2.5 minutes also. And I have the magic timer. And it's on audio, so you should be able to hear it when it runs out, but I'll give you a warning 15 seconds before. So again, it's set for 2.5 minutes right now as we begin. Any questions from the candidates? And by the way, we're going to go through the candidates in a sliding order, so everybody gets a chance to go first at least 3 or 4 times. So it will not always be the same person going first. So we'll begin with the opening statements, alphabetical order, beginning with you, Phil. And the time has begun.
Turn your mic on, Phil. Sorry. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Once again, thank you for taking the time to do this. And I'm sorry to hear this will be the last time you're doing it.
We'll see.
Those are big shoes to fill. And I commiserate with your successor. How's that? So it's great to be here, and thank you all for showing up, and thanks for the people who called me and emailed me, and also for the people who've submitted questions online. I really do appreciate that. I think tend to meet the candidates gives you an opportunity to sit back and say, why do I live in Sunset Valley? Why do I choose to live here? And why am I running? And so, and it's good to put those down on paper because sometimes we forget. Very simply, I'm running for City Council because I want to do my part to help preserve the unique lifestyle that is Sunset Valley. 8 years ago, my wife and I, after spending 13 years living in Lakeway, half of it on Lake Travis, which is a beautiful lake, we decided we wanted something different. And we started looking in this area, and there was 3 things that attracted us to this area. The principles and values of this city were very, very important, number 1. Number 2, the environment and open spaces. Just driving around, it impresses you from day one. And the third thing is the location. We happen to enjoy going downtown, and we happen to enjoy, going to the theater and going to shows and going to music and so on. But then I started thinking, what are those values that were so important to us? What do they represent? And I came up with the following. I think the first thing is a commitment to protecting and honoring our natural environment. Not just protecting, but we honor it. We go to great lengths to give it the credit and the goodness that it deserves. So that was very important to us. And I'm still starstruck every morning, well, most mornings when I drive down Oakdale and I see the turkey, the mother turkey with the 2 baby turkeys. And I'm thinking, how many places could you see that?
30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. And I think a commitment to protecting the natural environment is very, very key. The involvement of residents in helping to run the city, I think, is somewhat unique. The third thing is the willingness of this city to share the success of our business district with the residents.
10.
And I think way back, when the shopping center first went in, the council and the mayor at that time took a very bold and innovative step and said, we're going to give that back. And they gave it back by no property tax. Those are reasons why we live here. Those are the reasons I want to run and represent the folks of this town. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Rob?
Thank you. This should be 2 minutes and 10 seconds. My name is Robert Johnson. 2 years ago, residents took a chance on me and elected me to city council. My platform from that time remains unchanged. My priorities are to protect our green spaces, support Sunset Valley businesses, and represent all residents. The past 2 years on city council have been marked by respectful discourse and overall harmony, even when we hold differing points of view. What began as apprehension and a lot of unknowns has transformed into excitement for me and a desire to serve again. Some of the highlights of council actions during my first term include using the venue tax to further protect our watershed, implementing a stimulus program to help local businesses recover after COVID shutdowns, the return of Art Fest, completing the mini mural project on utility boxes, moving forward with the parks and open space planning, and many more. These were all successes because of the groups of people who worked to make them happen. But I also want to highlight my individual investment in the city of Sunset Valley. I see myself as someone who takes a hands-on approach, and I'm proud of my personal involvement in projects as well. I got local businesses like Bougie's and Orange Theory involved in the Daisy Dash. I sat down with the folks at Love Tide to help them fill in their stimulus program application on the day it was due. I organized a group of residents to begin clearing a path for the Valley Creek Trail connection. If you're watching this at home, you may notice the improved audio and video quality that I worked with city staff to help set up. I even hustled around in the early morning hours, directing vendors to their spots for Art Fest. I feel like my love for the city shows in my actions, and maybe that's how I've recruited many other residents to become involved in city committees. Sunset Valley has some big tasks on the horizon. We will be finalizing our comprehensive plan and future land use map, which will impact the next 10 years of life in our city. I hope to be a responsible steward of these important documents. I'd also like to see progress made towards thoughtfully implementing the plans for our parks and open space committee spaces. But along with the big and small tasks that come to our city council, I'd like the chance to spend the next 2 years being personally involved in finding the delicate balance between preserving all that is unique about Sunset Valley while helping it become even greater. Thanks for being here tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions. 2:10, right?
Yep. 8 left. I may have to let this run out. I don't know how to reset it. Okay, we're wasting 8 seconds. There we go. Charles.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you, Tom, for moderating. My name is Charles Young. I live at 26 Reese Drive, and I've lived in Sunset Valley for not quite 4.5 years. And I feel very fortunate and very grateful to live here. Within a couple months of moving here, I joined the Budget and Finance Committee, which I've been on for 4 years. 1 year as the vice chair, the last 2 years as the chair. One of the many things that I love about Sunset Valley is that we still practice democracy with a small d here. Any citizen can get involved, join a committee, run for office, help make a positive difference in the community. And I think that is an absolutely wonderful thing. Another thing that I love about Sunset Valley is our commitment to the natural environment, our open spaces, our trails, our parks. My wife, my dog, and I walk in our parks and our trails around our house just about every day, and it is one of the best things in life. I'm grateful to the people who came before me and made Sunset Valley what it was. I want to help preserve, protect, and enhance what we have so that the people who come after us can enjoy what we enjoy. I came to Central Texas about 40 years ago when I was stationed at Fort Hood and moved to UT to go to school, or moved to Austin to go to school at UT, where, much to my surprise, I now teach at the School of Information. I've also had a 30-plus year career here as a software engineer and architect because I was lucky enough to move to Austin right at the beginning of the high-tech boom. My other volunteer work that I've done besides being on the Budget and Finance Committee is I was once president of the nonprofit that supports the Austin Animal Shelter. And dogs and cats have always been a big part of my life. I know from my work on budget and finance that we've never been in a better position financially, both in terms of our sales tax revenue and in terms of our funds. So I believe it's a time to invest in ourselves and our community, particularly
30 seconds.
Particularly in our public infrastructure, open spaces, parks, trails, public art, play areas, and things like that. So investing in our public infrastructure will improve our quality of life, make Sunset Valley more attractive to businesses, and leave a lasting legacy for the future. So I would really appreciate your vote because I want to help make this happen, and with your vote I can help make it happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. We'll wait for the timer to reset. There we go. No. Just saying. We're being a little silly here. 3 seconds. That's the difference. Karen?
Oh, thanks, Tom. And good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Karen Medicus, and I live on Pillow Road. I bought my house here in 1995, and my commitment to preserving and enhancing our quality of life, I think, is evidenced by the volunteer service that I've given to the city over 25 years. My service includes city council. I was on city council from 2019 to 21. Been on zoning commission. I was on that for 17 years. And planning and environmental, and I served on the marketing and ad hoc committee. I'm founding member of the Arts Commission and committed to bring art alive in Sunset Valley, as evidenced by the electrical box project that I hope you've all seen. We produced the 14th year of Art Fest this year in April, bringing over 7,500 people into our community and over 90 vendors, and involving our local businesses in sponsorship in the event. So it's grown tremendously from the 12 vendors we had here the first year at City Hall. Before retiring, I held leadership roles at local and national organizations, and my work on the national level involved facilitating partnerships between municipalities and nonprofit organizations. I had 16 cities that I worked across the United States, everything from Miami to Spokane, Washington, and everything in between, all sizes, shapes, and information going on. And we looked at what was happening in that community and how together we could focus on solving the issues that were facing our communities in each of those. I also managed a $6 million grant fund to support that project. During my 2 years on council, I focused on the big picture, because I think it's important for our community to have a vision. We need to know where we're going so that we can develop the roadmap on how we're going to get there, rather than reinventing the wheel every time a new council comes on board. So I think it's important to do planning.
30 seconds.
You have to have a vision. Improving resident engagement, community involvement in parks and open space planning, and launching the new city website, promotion of our city shopping district have been my focus on council and on my work on committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, she made it. So this is good. Okay, Horatio, we just got to wait 2 seconds for the clock to run out. Someday I'll figure out how to reset this. Horatio?
We go. Hi, my name is Horacio Zambrana. Thank you for being here this evening, and thank you to all the other candidates. So, some people say Horatio, others say Horacio. It doesn't matter. I have a lot of fun. I actually keep a tally of all the different names that I get called through my lifetime. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm never disturbed by that. But I thought I'd take my presentation this first few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself, because I feel like I'm the new kid in the block. So I have been to Texas and Sunset Valley for about 5 years. We live in the Meadows. I live in Curly Mesquite Cove, and I have a house number with a single digit, which I thought was very interesting. Public service, this is something that I'm very proud of. When I was really wrestling with my career around the midpoint of my career, I had the opportunity to go serve in the Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina. The opportunity was there to be for a year, to move into Mississippi, and to go there to rehabilitate some of the destruction, not physically, but through an investment to build some of the school's infrastructure in networking. So I got selected. And the second big test was getting my wife to go along with that because he was moving to Mississippi for a year. But I'm glad that she said yes, because it was one of the most fascinating and amazing times of our lives. And it really gave me a taste for what serving others means. Why am I running? During COVID, I got a renewed sense of service again. I got to meet some of my neighbors that I never met before. We got to sit in circles 6 feet apart and really get to know each other. I got to walk the trails of Sunset Valley, and those refresh my spirit. At a time that it was very dark, I found a lot of peace and rest just walking around in Sunset Valley. So why am I running? Because I think there is a huge sense of what all the other candidates are saying, to preserve this beautiful chunk of land that we call Sunset Valley, I think is important. I think it just does something special to each of us, to our families, to our children, and I think it's very important to do that. Why vote for me?
30 seconds.
I'm a curious person. I will ask a lot of questions. I will listen. I will reason, and then I will make a decision. And I love the town. I have fallen in love with it, and I hope to get a chance to be able to serve you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll begin the question portion of our time together. And again, I'll need your help. I haven't messed this up too many times, but we will go in sequence. So if I accidentally miss somebody, you are empowered to say, hold on, Tom, time out. Let's make sure we keep this going in the correct order. And I'm setting all the clocks here. Oops, that was not good. And this will be 1.5 minutes each. So our first question is number 16. Number 16 is, what are your thoughts on the Parks and Open Space Plan and the process by which the ad hoc committee came up with a plan? That begins with Rob. Ready?
I'm ready. You know, I think I have notes for every topic, color-coded, and I don't think I wrote one down. I read this question, and I didn't write a card for this. So when it came out of P&E, I was very supportive of sending off this task of kind of auditing what we have as far as public places in Sunset Valley and determining where there are gaps in facilities. And putting that ad hoc committee together, it was a really good way to just like get a group of involved residents to focus on that very important task. Lisa Versace was the chair of it. What came out of it, I attended a lot of the town halls and answered a lot of the questionnaires. When you're on council, you try not to put your finger on as much, and so I tried to just attend as if I was just a resident in that capacity. The public pool that I wanted didn't end up making it, and you just got to take your lumps and move on. But I really liked the work that they did with Astor Robinson. The document was beautiful, and it really highlighted really the 3 points where money can be invested in the city in infrastructure to provide kind of the best bang for the buck so that it could be used by everyone. Is that?
That's it.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow, that's fast. They did a good job.
Okay, and something I forgot to mention, the sequence will go through for the permanent chairs and then the 1 year, so the 2 year and 1 year. So we'll finish with Phil, we'll go Charles, Phil, then we'll go over to you two and go through, okay? So Charles, you get to go, and I'll get you a 10-second warning, sorry.
I really like the work that the ad hoc committee, Planning Environmental, and other folks did on the Parks and Open Space Master Plan. I'm a believer in good process and good planning. And I thought that the entire sequence of events, from the survey that was done of all the residents to the work that the committee did, they came and presented to Budget and Finance as well, to the final plan, was really well done. And if you look at the documents they produced, they're very clear. You understand exactly what they want to do and where they want to go, as well as, because I'm on Budget and Finance, laying out how much all this is going to cost. And I think all of that enables, as we go forward, really good planning. And I think that kind of process and that planning takes into account the desires of the majority of the community. So I thought it was extremely well done, and I think it's a good model going forward for how we should do these kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. Phil?
The three things that really impressed me about the committee, and I see two members here, my neighbor Roger Edmondson and Lisa Versace, was first of all, the amount of talent that was in that group was pretty significant, and one we should be very, very proud of. The second one is how quick it came together. And the third thing was the time, attention, and effort that people put into it. And I think the best thing we can do as a council is to listen and enact. It was very phased, it was logical, it was not expensive. People took those things into consideration, and they did not sacrifice the things that we all hold dear to us. So at the end of the process, you had a recommendation, a suggestion that was logical, took care of what we all value, and more than anything, it represented a consensus of people, which I think is very, very important. The thing we should do is act on it. We have to respect the people and the effort that went into it, and the best way we can do that as a council is to do it. That would be my thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just reset this. I think I'm going to give up on this shortly.
Thank you.
That's more trouble than it's worth. Yeah, I'm going to get my phone out. Okay, you want to be? Okay, we got a new timer. The mayor's going to time. This is really good. These things are done. Okay, Karen, do you want the question restated, or are you good to go?
No, I got it.
Okay.
So I think.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Sorry, 1 minute, 30 seconds.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Ready? Okay. I think they did a great job. I've been a proponent for many years of getting more community engagement, and the work that this committee did with Asakura Robinson, the consultants, brought in more involvement from our community than any other thing that the city has done, and I believe even more involvement than the last election. So it really speaks volumes to the effort that they put in to gathering information from everybody and getting a lot of input, from having maps spread out to you could vote for different things, just a lot of different options. The survey was excellent, giving people in different locations options to participate. So it wasn't all at one place, it wasn't all at one time, and that's the kind of thing we do need more of. And I really want us to move forward with the recommendations and make a decision and get the process of implementation in the works, because I've seen over the years I've been here, other studies done or surveys done or conceptual plans done, and they sit on the shelf. It's time for action. We need to invest in our community with the plans that our residents want. So that's what I think about the work the committee did, and thank you, Lisa, and everyone else who was here on the committee.
Thank you. Okay, Horacio, I messed up.
You're set?
Yeah, you were supposed to go before Kieran on this one. So I will flip this for the next one.
Next one you'll be good.
I just skipped, my eyes skipped down a line. So Horacio, you got this, and you will go next first.
No worries.
Okay, go.
So I had the opportunity to review the plan. I had the opportunity to look at all the recommendations. There is a lot of stuff in there, and it addresses every single aspect of our green space, which is awesome. I think that where I put my hat of what I can contribute to City Council is, how do we prioritize things and segment things so that we can actually be successful in delivering and executing? Because I think Sunset Valley residents want to see action. They want to see things being done and deliver. And I think that one way to do that is quick prioritization, smart prioritization, and then making choices for how we spend that budget. I mean, 4.7 to 7.x million dollars is something to consider, so we need to be thoughtful about how we prioritize, what we put first, second, or third, etc. But that's my general thinking on that, and I really appreciate the work that went into all that.
Thank you. Our next question is question number 17. I'll read that in full. Please let us know how often you have attended Sunset Valley City Council meetings over the past 2 years. How engaged are you in our process of governance? For instance, do you frequently weigh in with your comments on this forum or speak up at council meetings, or do you have any volunteer projects specific to our city that you are passionate about? Charles, we start off with you on this one.
Thank you. I have attended city council meetings on a semi-regular basis, usually when I'm involved in something or have something to say. More often, I'm listening to them. I have spoken in front of city council several times on various issues, usually to do with budget and finance. I have written any number of comments on open town halls about the issues that I care about. Obviously, I've been on budget and finance for 4 years, and if you don't know, budget and finance is kind of a marathon because we meet almost every week during the summer when we're putting the budget together. So I've been very, very involved with that. There are other things that I'm passionate about, in particular, the Parks and Open Space Master Plan and the Comprehensive Plan, and very soon the Land Development Code, that I think are critical to the future of this city, that I want to be involved in, and I want to see other people get very involved in. So.
Okay, thank you. Ready? Phil?
Thank you. Well, one of the things, and Councilmember Johnson can take credit for this, with the audio and visual improvements we had, it made it a lot easier to watch the various meetings remotely from the comfort of your home. So I enjoyed actually listening, watching the council meetings, the Budget and Finance Committee meetings, and got regular feedback on the ad hoc marketing committee from my friend Roger Edmondson. So thank you for doing that. It makes it a lot easier to be a participant. I think after serving for 1 year as an alternate member on the zoning commission and then 2 years as council, I made the conscientious decision to step back. And maybe, I said, maybe people have heard enough of Phil. Maybe it's time for new people to come forward and we expand the pool of people who are going to contribute. And that was a deliberate action on my behalf. And you know what? It's good. People did come forward. Different people came forward, and we enjoyed new ideas and new concepts, and there was a freshness about it. So I made that conscientious decision, kept track of it through the improved audio-visual, and it was interesting to watch. And, what am I passionate about? My passion is preserving what we have. And we can't take for granted it will exist without us putting effort into it. And that's what we need to do.
10.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
So I've been on council for the last 2 years, so I have missed one city council meeting, and I've taken 2 remotely. One was in eastern Colorado on a very sketchy cell connection. But yeah, so I've been there for council meetings. In my role there, I've also been the liaison to Public Safety and Arts Commission, and I was a regular attendee of those as well. Previous to being on council and the liaison for those other committees, I was also the vice chair of Arts Commission. And so I think I'm a big believer in the community-led governance, getting more people involved in the committees. you could tell the committees that I work on because they usually have the most number of members, because I am just stalking neighbors down the street saying like, hey, have you signed up for a committee? I got 2 more on budget and finance, Marion, McMillan, and Corbin. So threw them, I don't want to say under the bus, it's like really fun, but you know, I just kind of feel like they see me walking down the street and they run inside their house to avoid getting requested. But
10 seconds.
So yes, I've been heavily involved in council and really love the involvement that our residents can have.
Okay, thank you. Ratio, I got this one.
Thank you, sir. I will not tell a lie. Up to 2 years ago, I could not care less about politics of any sort. City politics, I thought, oh, that's boring. But then I began to talk to my neighbors. And then I realized the commitment and what it takes to actually run and preserve and do things like we do in the city of Sunset Valley. So then I got asked to serve at the CED committee, and I have been serving there for about 2 years, meeting a lot of wonderful people during that time. And through that, I have attended possibly 2 or 3 meetings during a period of 2 years, just staying close to some of the things that were of most interest to me. Yeah, so it's quite a turnabout phase for me to actually be sitting here. I never expected to be running for anything, but I think there comes a time where everybody needs to do their part. I feel that time for me is now, and you know, it's up to the voters to decide whether, you know, this is something that I'm going to do or not. But you know, I think the opportunity to serve is what I appreciate, and it's great, and I think is a great little town to do it with a whole bunch of wonderful people.
Thank you, Horacio. Karen.
So maybe I'm too much of a geek, but I attend most all of the meetings of city council and committees. Having been the chair of the Arts Commission for so many years and a founding member, I'm always on that. And even when I was on council, I was the liaison for the Arts Commission and for the Planning and Environmental Committee. But one of the things I think is really important about committee work is that committees aren't working in silos. So I think it's important for the committees to know what each other's working on. And I've seen over the years where different committees will be working on similar things, but moving in different directions. And so I made a commitment when I was on council to volunteer to facilitate some joint sessions where the committees could come together and share what they were working on and look for where are those intersects where we could work together and not duplicate efforts, because we're a small community, and let's face it, a lot of the same people are volunteering on the same committees for years and years and years. And you know, bringing that all together so we can work together more effectively and more efficiently and do more for our community, I think is really important. So that's why I kind of try to look and see what everybody's doing so I can say, hey, did you know we're doing this, or we need to have a joint session on this topic so we can all bring those
10
things
seconds.
together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With the permission of the candidates, I think I'm going to skip the next question, which is question 2, which is please describe your service on city committees. Do you all feel you did that pretty well already? I'm right there with you. Okay. We're now going to question 20. Question 20, should the next city administrator, potential city council members, and mayor be required to disclose all his, her, their sources of income and potential conflicts of interest? So we begin with Phil again.
It's an interesting question. I'm glad someone raised it. The whole issue of conflict of interest is covered in our bylaws, by the way. And I was personally subject to this action when I purchased additional land, and I was on council, and it went before the council. The bylaws spell out, if you are involved in something where there's a potential conflict that has a value, it's very, very minimal value. It really is very low. You have to excuse yourself from the dais. You have to excuse yourself from the dais, not only from the discussion, but the voting on it. That's what I did. So the conflict of interest is covered in that element. In terms of the city administrator and outside income sources, this was raised when we hired the city administrator, and I proposed in the contract that we spell out, because I'm used to this in the high-tech industry, that no outside employment could be tolerated or would be supported. That was turned down. That may be something we want to consider in the future when we hire the next city administrator, whoever that is, from within or from outside, that person is committed. Not I'm saying the previous person was not committed, but her or his only source of income or primary source of income comes from what they do here at the City of Sunset Valley.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Rob?
Thank you. So as Phil mentioned, we are required to step down from the dais if we have to vote on anything that we have a financial stake in, or come forward and say. So it's covered there. I'm happy to do it now. My finances are quite sad and simple, but when it comes to city administrator, again, the previous city administrator did have outside work, and that was allowed. I had a bit of an issue, but that was part of her contract, so there was not much we could do about it. After a period, she did just say, I'm going to walk away from it. It's become too big of an issue. I think, again, most full-time positions, it's kind of like you need to have all your focus be on your main source of income. That said, Sylvia was always super responsive to any text I sent her. So I don't think it conflicted with her ability. But yes, for council members and any city administrator, wherever they come from, I think that's a good policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Charles?
I think it's a good idea for senior staff, elected officials, and their families to disclose whether or not they have any sources or potential sources of income from Sunset Valley, or that it derives somehow from Sunset Valley. I know that we have policies that cover this, but you need to have full disclosure, even if it's not something that's on the dais or something that's out there. That this should be known by everyone, so there is no even appearance of a conflict of interest. For myself, my income comes from my job as a system architect, and I have no other sources of income and no other kinds of conflict of interest with respect to Sunset Valley.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Still hot. I think it's a good idea for total transparency, and I agree with Phil. If I was on council at that point, I would have voted for that clause to be added, because running the city is a big job. Even volunteering for the city and being on council, it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of work. If you're going to read all of the backup material, and the city administrator has to handle all of that, and really should be overseeing all of the positions in the city and knowing what's gone on, I don't see where there'd be room for an outside position. So I'd like to see that moving forward be added to our city administrator contract. And as everybody said, other things for council are included in the policies, but that happened to be omitted from that last contract. So I think it really is a good idea. And I don't have any conflicts of interest. I'm retired. I'm a jeweler. I don't make any money from the city and very little from anywhere else. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Horacio?
Yeah, I think I agree with the rest of the candidates. I think it's very, very important to be open. Like everybody else, my source of income is the job that I do for the teacher retirement system of Texas. And I think as I was pondering about the question, one of the things that came to mind is for some folks, there might be a problem disclosing maybe a trust or maybe something else, etc. So what if what we did was make sure that everybody signed an ethics letter, something that says, hey, I have no conflict of interest. I'm signing this officially to say that I don't, etc. But what I would hate is to lose very good people from serving in city council and from serving as city administrators if we become too strict on that. Although I recognize the value and importance of actually calling that out, because we don't want to have unanswered questions and then be wondering and then have issues. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Horacio. Our next question is question 12. In the past, landscaping of the trails have cut down trees and other shade-providing plants. Do you support cutting down trees and shade plants on our trails? Begins with Rob.
In general, no. I can see how, and I'm out running on the trails multiple times a week, I can see if you are out on the trails and see trees cut down. I can assure you Carolyn and Public Works they love trees. The trees that are cut down are either dead or they are like ligustrums or some other invasive species. So I feel confident in the leadership of Carolyn, the Public Works Director, and the rest of staff. Depending on which area it is, some of those, kind of like the South Hills Conservation Area, is really meant to just be natural. If there's anything cuts down, it's because of safety issues and maybe a little bit of cleaning out for fire reasons. The Sunset Valley Nature Area is a little bit more maintained, larger trail access and stuff like that. So one of my pet projects is more urban forestry. I think between the freezes and the drought, we've lost a lot of trees across the city. And it's our goal, or it's my goal, to get more trees planted. There's actually an event on October 24th. We're going to be planting at 37 Lone Oak and Valley Creek Park.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Phil.
It's interesting.
Whoop. Charles.
Okay.
Almost messed it up, Phil. Go, Charles.
Okay, so we shouldn't be cutting down trees and shade plants unless there's a very good reason. Rob enumerated some of the reasons, right? They're dead, they need to be removed, whatever else. But as responsible stewards of our environment, we need to make sure that we're doing things like cutting back on invasive plants and species, right? Because they crowd out, or excuse me, not native ones, invasive ones, because they crowd out the native plants. So as someone who spent a lot of time in their backyard cutting down ligustrum, I know the importance of this. But again, as part of our process of managing and being good stewards of our land, we need to make sure that we're doing things like this.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
For real?
You're for real. Okay. No kidding.
It's actually very interesting that my wife and I walk the trails 5, 6, 7 times a week. And the other day we were walking the trail off of Oakdale, closest to Brody, and I noticed that trail had been severely cleared, and it was very open, and it lost a lot of its allure and attractiveness. Now, I'm assuming that was done maybe for access for the new police officer in his all-terrain vehicle. I don't know. So my answer is no, I don't think we should be cutting down the plants unless there's a safety issue, unless there's a reason for access for the police officer, who I think is, by the way, is doing an outstanding job. So no, I don't think we should. I do think we should continue to maintain the trails. I've noticed on my walks there are some obstacles that are quite dangerous, actually. There's an iron bar. If you walk off of Oakdale, there's an iron bar that I've tripped over more than once. So the answer to the question is no, unless there's an issue of emergency access or if there's an issue of safety. So no, I don't think we should. We need to preserve what we have, not be cutting it down.
Okay, thank you. Horacio? Nope. On. You got it.
We do need to preserve what we have. I think the beauty of our environment is just its nature, and I think artificially changing that is not beneficial. I do, however, believe that there are some things that need to be done because of safety reason. So if something is dry and a fire hazard, probably need to be looked at. Something is going to potentially fall on somebody's head. I think that needs to be looked at. But on the whole, I agree that we should leave our natural environments alone and to prosper and gain, as with the beauty that they were designed.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
So no, in general, I don't think we should be cutting down shade trees and plants. But I do think, again, like everyone else said, if it's a safety issue, if it's a disease tree, if it's an invasive species, I think we should be getting rid of those. I think it's important for us to be looking at fire protection in those green spaces. because we are a dry area and fire can be extremely costly and dangerous. And I think without a healthy environment, we don't have a healthy future. And part of that is, I think, restoration of some of our prairie lands and restoration of our native species. So I think it's really important to look at it from that perspective, and that will make the environment healthier for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is number 8. Are you a proponent of changing the zoning for our shopping centers to include mixed-use developments, specifically multifamily housing? We can begin with Charles.
I think we need to look at the question of mixed-use development very carefully as a city. That's a conversation that we need to have as a community about what we really want and where we really want things to go. In the reading that I've done about kind of the future of retail, the word that pops up a lot is experiential. People want not just to go out and shop, but they want experiences. They want to go out and have a meal. They want to take their kids to a playground. They want to be entertained. They want to see public art. Right? They want to see all these kinds of things. And I think that at least one of the landlords is talking about going in this direction for this kind of development. Now, that kind of development does not require mixed-use residential. And like I said, I think that's really the future development. You're starting to see that kind of development pop up around the country. One of the questions I have about mixed-use development with residential is, how does this affect the expenses of the city? Right? If we have 100, 200, 300 citizens move into mixed-use residential, our expenses go up. We need more public safety. We need more fire protection. We need more infrastructure. We need all kinds of things. How does that balance? By doing that, will we also increase our tax revenues, our sales tax revenues? That's an important question that we need to answer, because I think we want to keep our subsidies and we don't want to have a city property tax. So understanding what the effects of this are important. Thank you.
Okay. Phil, we'll get a reset here.
It's a complex issue, and I think what I would like to propose is we as a city embark on developing a true economic development plan that may have event horizons, maybe 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, and 25 years, and be proactive in that. So, and I think going back to the success of the ad hoc committee on the open spaces, maybe something of that nature where we can put together an economic development plan and be proactive, engaging our business partners over there in the shopping centers, because it's going to hit us sometime. We might as well be prepared. We might as well have a plan that takes that into account, and also plans for the eventualities. Retail is changing. We all know what's changing. We all know what's happening on South Lamar at Brody Oaks. We need to be prepared. We need to have answers. We need to satisfy the requirements of our residents, and we need to be proactive, engaged in the business district as well. If we don't, we're going to have something delivered on our step that may not be pleasant. We can be proactive. We demonstrated that with the ad hoc committee we put in. I suggest something of that nature to put together a true economic development plan that we can share, we can plan for, and will take into account eventualities we may see that happen in our shopping centers and also in the land development.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Rob.
So my take on this is mixed use is nothing to be afraid of, but mixed use with multifamily apartment units is something that I would not like to see in Sunset Valley. The number of extra people that would be added, again, we would need more infrastructure, we need more police officers, we would need, and even though all those people would potentially shop at our shopping centers, I don't think there's not economies of scale to be leveraged in order to support that. If we added twice as many people, we're not going to get twice as much tax income. Also, those people will not have big backyards. There'll be twice as many people on the trails. There'll be twice as many dogs on the trails. If we could make a material difference in the housing crisis in Austin, I might start thinking of it, but there's no way we would even change it by a percentage point. And so we would lose the uniqueness of Sunset Valley without gaining anything back. To Phil's point about what could potentially happen to our economic situation, I've been talking about putting together, we have public safety tabletop games, And I'm interested in setting aside an economic tabletop game so that we can say what happens if one of those shopping centers is removed, what happens to our finances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Oh, sorry. So I'm again, with Rob, I'm not in favor of adding more residential. And this question specifically asked about multifamily, and that's not something, I think we have enough rooftops surrounding us that we don't need to add more rooftops and more residents. I do think at some point we are going to have to look at what happens when those shopping centers redevelop, and they are moving, centers are moving more towards experiential, like South Lake, and where there's green space in the middle and the shopping is on the sides, and not so much like Domain and Mueller, because you have to park in a parking garage and then you have to walk and shop. I think one of the reasons our shopping center is today doing more income tax, sales tax for our city than it did in 2019 before the pandemic is because it's convenient. And that's what I hear people talk about. I can pull up in front of the store I want to shop at, get what I want, go drive across the street and go to the next store for what I want. And I'm not, I'm getting my tasks done. I'm not having to walk all over the place to do that. So I think that's something that we have that's really unique. And I think having a single family community, we're a small community. We don't need to expand that part. We need to make this an experience for our shopping district that is attractive, make our city attractive with art.
Okay. Horacio?
I think that the replies from the other candidates, I pretty much agree with almost every part of it. I think that what I would offer that is in addition to that is that we need to be thinking proactively. Things are rapidly changing. Retail is rapidly changing. Malls are disappearing, and I think that rather than wait for things to come to us, we need to really be thinking now, what is something that is going to be reasonable and make sense for the city of Sunset Valley? Something that is going to allow us to maintain this town that we love, and something that is still going to maintain the ability for us to keep the tax base, but without losing to large traffic, to crime, to other issues. So I think something sensible, something strategic, but it requires that we start planning now and don't wait until it comes knocking at our door.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is question 23. Sunset Valley is working on our comprehensive plan and land development code. Please disclose any development-related businesses you or your family are involved in or have been involved in. Please explain if there are any potential conflicts of interest, such as business ties to current or former staff, engagement in local businesses, deals, etc. Also, please disclose if your spouse is a developer or real estate agent. And we begin. Seriously, Phil, it's your turn.
I find this question interesting, and the timing of the question is rather interesting. We have a history, by the way, on Sunset Valley of council members and mayors being real estate agents or real estate brokers. So I find it interesting the time. In terms of, I hear, the issue is people making money off the city. I don't know how to do that. Last time I checked, this is not a paid position. So anyway, enough of the joviality. My wife is a real estate broker, has been for 21 years, and she sells both commercial and residential property. She's very, very good. She typically ranks in the top 5% in this territory. And if anybody needs a realtor, I happen to have a business card here, and I'd be happy to share it with the person that may have raised that question. We've covered the conflict of interest one. No, I think we should disclose if we have a conflict of interest. It's very easy to do. I do not have a conflict of interest. And if I remember, when you take the oath to be a council member, don't you have to swear something to that effect as well? That you're acting in the best interest of the city? I think so. So I think this is an issue that is important, but I think it's covered. And we need to make sure it's policed and acted upon accordingly. And it's as simple as that, really.
Thank you. Rob?
I want to answer more than just no. So I'm a software engineer, and my wife is a speech therapist. And but yes, I think it's very important that people disclose any activity that they're involved in. We had an interesting situation with the STR, short-term rental discussion, where there was some question about people that were voting on it, and it's like, well, do you want to do this with your house? And the thing is, it's a very small city. There's 5 of us. Every decision that we make up here is going to have some impact on us, on your neighbors. And so I guess the only reason I bring that up is, it's a really great place to live. Real estate agents usually have their finger on the pulse, and so when things open up, I think they are the first to jump on it because they see the value in everything that Sunset Valley provides. So I'm not afraid of real estate agents, but it is good to just have that in the back of your mind when you're deliberating up here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charles?
I have no development-related business I've ever been involved in or any possible conflicts of interest, just to get that out of the way. My spouse did once own a couple of properties in Austin that were related to her business that she sold when she closed her business about 4 years ago. Neither of us is a developer or real estate agent. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay,
So, no.
thanks. No. Okay, Horacio?
No conflict of interest, and I yield the rest of my time.
Love the brevity.
Karen?
No conflict of interest for myself, and my husband's retired from the movie production industry, so no conflict from my spouse.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is 24. This is a little bit long because there's an explanation, but I will read it in whole. It has come to my attention there are several businesses in Sunset Valley that no longer accept cash as payment for goods and services. After speaking with many of my neighbors and residents, I feel, in this overwhelming response I received, is that this is blatantly discriminatory against those who are perhaps less fortunate, disadvantaged, or simply unbanked. As a matter of fact, I personally was denied service in Sunset Valley on 2 separate occasions because I did not happen to have a credit card with me at that time. That said, my question is, will you support persuading businesses to accept cash and/or enacting a city ordinance mandating that businesses accept cash doing business in Sunset Valley? Rob, you get to start.
Sure. This is a tricky one because private businesses, I feel like they have their right to dictate what form of payment that they do take. And where I'm originally from, years and years ago, it was the opposite problem, where you would have a credit card and they didn't want credit cards because then there's a paper trail and then you have to report all the income. But anyway, we do have a new community coordinator role, Danielle, she's awesome. And I think this is a situation where some of the businesses out in our retail district might not realize the harm that it is doing to the residents who, unbanked is the perfect term for it. There are people that they just don't fit into the financial world like the vast majority of people. They don't trust banks. They're not set up for direct deposits, or they may not be here legally and don't want to be on the grid, but they still need goods and services. So I think it is a situation where staff can go out and just explain the situation to some of our businesses and hope that they can see the other side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Charles?
There you go. I agree with Rob that this is a little bit tricky. Certainly, I think the fact that some of our businesses do not accept cash is potentially discriminatory, towards working people, towards older people who normally use cash. But mandating it, I think, is a slippery slope. I'd want to get some legal advice on that, about whether we can actually even do that. But I think what we need to do is go and talk to our businesses, work on our relationships with them, see if we can persuade them that it's in their interest to accept cash if they're not. But I don't think like I said, I think it's a slippery slope if we try to mandate this kind of thing. And again, I'd want some legal advice before we even began to consider that step.
Okay, thank you. Phil?
It's a very interesting question. When I was on council, we did some research of who comes to our shopping centers, and it's a very diverse group of people. It really is, more diverse than what people may think. And a certain section of that group may choose not to have a credit card or may not be able to have a credit card. And that's unfortunate. And I think that is, not only is it unfortunate for those people, we're missing out on that revenue. That revenue will go somewhere else. And we need to be as competitive as possible. And I think that there is a question that Rob says about what can we do from a legal point of view. But as I understand it, the question was asked, should we encourage businesses to stop this practice? And my answer to that is yes. I don't think we have the right, and I would say maybe council needs to advise us on that, to mandate that you will accept cash. But I think we should do everything we can to encourage people. For one, because I don't want to see any form of discrimination, and two, I don't want to lose our business. It's as simple as that. Because if they don't shop here because they won't take credit, cash, they'll go somewhere else. And I, for one, I use American Express consistently. I'm not going to use American Express to buy a $3.50 cup of coffee or a $3.50 cookie. I'm not going to do that. And I will go somewhere else with my business. So I think the question that was raised by the person was, should we encourage the businesses to take cash? And the answer is, yes, we should.
Okay. Karen?
So not to repeat everything everyone else has said, I agree with everything, and legal counsel is definitely needed in this, but I think it's important to encourage and communicate with the business partners that we have about that this is an issue. It has come up. And we have our, as Rob said, we have our new community coordinator, and she's starting now to reach out to the businesses and develop those relationships. And again, it's information sharing. It's having that conversation. They might not be aware of it. So I think that's the place to start.
Okay, thank you. Horacio?
Phil, I'm one of those guys that pay for $3 cup of coffee with a credit card. But I do recognize that in a room like this, there are probably people, like some relatives of ours that have a money clip and they carry cash. I think that it's a great question. I think that the larger issue is how do we foster a better relationship with our business community and bring community and businesses together to talk about some of these things. I think we need to learn how to influence. I think somebody said we need to find out, hey, the business stock money. So if they know that there is a segment of our population that is pretty much those people carrying the cash and the money clip, they probably want to support that. And all we have to do is make the connection. And I would take the opportunity to go beyond that to what are the other things? What are the other questions that would make sense for us to be talking to our businesses and they talking to us about what are some of the things that we need to be doing better? I think we need to look for a win-win partnership, and I think this would be an opportunity to get that conversation started. And CED can help greatly with that. We're thinking about making strides towards making that happen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just a reminder on the schedule, we're now just a little bit after 8. 8:15, we'll stop with these questions, do the magic bowl for some questions from the floor. If we run out of those, we'll go back to questions off the list. Closing statements will be at 8:45. So our next question is question number 22. In general, do you want more commercial properties and development for commercial businesses in Sunset Valley? Or are you generally happy with the balance of residential and commercial properties that we have today? Basically, are you pro more commercial development or not? And so we begin with Charles.
Like I said before, there we go.
You're good.
Our financial system right now, or our financial situation right now has never been better in terms of our sales tax revenue and our budget funds. So I am very happy with the current balance we have between our commercial and our residential and green space balance. I think, of course we need to be engaged with our businesses and we need to be working for them as they go into the future. But I think that's the redevelopment of what we already have. I've been walking around and talking to people since I became a candidate, and one person said something very interesting and important to me. She said that the money comes and goes, but when our green spaces are gone, they're gone. And at this point in Sunset Valley, I don't think there is any need to do any kind of additional commercial development on land that we have currently for green space. We're in a good situation. I think we're going to continue to be in a good situation. One of the things that we talked about during the last budget cycle was we hired a company that did a demographic study around here. And one of the things that demographic study showed was that more people are moving into this area with higher incomes. And that is a very good thing for the future of our commercial district.
Thank you. Phil?
The short answer is I'm happy with the mix we have right now. I think the more important question, as we discussed earlier on the previous round of questions actually, was what's the future look like? And we don't know the answer to that, but I go back to the fact that's why we need a true economic development plan. We need to be proactive there. The mix today is right. I don't see us wanting to change that. We don't know what it's going to look like in the future. No one knows. But we can be proactive. We can get smart people around the table and try and figure that out. That's, I think, is the real issue, not what it is today. What do we think it could be in the future, and what impact could that have on us?
Okay, thank you. Rob?
When I talk to friends that are in neighborhoods that are around Sunset Valley, I always tell them how much I wish South Austin could devolve into little cities. It is so great that we have this it's almost exactly 1/3 green space, 1/3 residential, 1/3 commercial. And again, our finances are very healthy. We service no debt. We pay cash. It's a great place to be in. When one business turns from, when we had Cane Rosso leave, that is a restaurant with a bar, and that sales tax, when that went away, what's coming in is a place that does not generate any sales tax. So when I see those situations happen, welcome to Sunset Valley. It's not putting any money in our pocket, but that's fine. We'll still have a robust mix. Those are the only times that I sometimes worry about where the money is going to come from. But again, we have healthy reserves. We have a healthy infrastructure. We're in a great spot, and I think it is a perfect mix. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Horacio?
I'm generally happy to answer the question directly as it was asked. In fact, I would be concerned to disturb that distribution, that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, I think is working great. I think of the traffic that we have on Brody, for instance, and it's hard enough to get out of the Meadows as it is today. So I'm thinking changing the distribution and adding a whole lot more to commercial retail space, could really make it very painful. But yeah, so short answer is I'm generally happy and I'm in support of maintaining and preserving what we have.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Ditto. Again, I'm not in favor of taking any of the city-owned property and making it commercial. I like the balance that we have. When I moved here, there was only one shopping center. That was Market Fair, where Home Depot is. The rest of those shopping centers were zoned single-family. So I remember a time, our city existed without all three shopping centers, with just one. So we have three, and I think that has really contributed to us being a prosperous community. We are in good shape. We have good reserves. Our sales tax revenue is up. The sky is not falling. It's time for us to invest in our city and improve the properties that we have. And I don't think we need any more commercial space. Let's renovate. When the shopping centers are ready to update, let's work with them to update that to the best benefit of the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are 5 minutes. We will not get another question from the list done before our time for floor questions. So what I suggest is we start floor, and I'll end those 5 minutes early. So here we go. Round and around. Mayor gets to pick the next one. Richard.
Are you supposed to read out their name?
Okay. You good to go? Okay, fine. Mayor? All right. Kind sir, you get to pick the next one. John Frick on Pillow. John? Yes, sir. And John, we'll give you a minute and a half for the question, then it'll go to the folks on the dais. And you may have to turn that on. There you go, got it.
My question I don't think has been answered tonight. We have two beautiful areas that different people, I mean, I think that we all love the uplands and we all love the Cougar Creek area. And there seems to be a little bit of conflict on where we should spend money on which one, and how should we deal with these two properties that we own. And I've for a long time have been a proponent of keeping the uplands as a park space for outdoor concerts, for picnics, for the residents to use in all kinds of ways. Even the school there is adjacent to that property, and we have Art Fest on a hot concrete parking lot, and there's always ways that we could incorporate the farmers market and
10 seconds.
the vendors to do something. So I love that, but then I also here recently see the benefit of Cougar Creek. So how would you deal with these two properties? Should we try to do both of them in stages or what?
Okay, thank you. John, if you could turn the mic back off. Yep, there you go. Thank you. Phil?
It's a very good question, and it's a complex question. So I think the recent surveys that were done, and also in conjunction with the ad hoc committee, came back, and the residents of the city overwhelmingly do not want to sell the uplands. They want to keep it. They want to use it in an environment that's synergistic with what we do today, and we have to honor that. Number one. Number two, I actually co-sponsored the original with Councilmember Reeds about the development of the Upper Cougar Creek, and I have talked to her, and I understand that's been modified and stepped back a little bit and done a slower development of it. The reason I like the Upper Cougar Creek is we miss a central location. Kudos to the marketing company that's put together the marketing campaign, because we don't have a lot to sell when it comes to other than, you know, the environment we have. We don't have a downtown. We don't have a central spot. The Upper Cougar Creek is not suited for a lot of things. It is suited for parkland. It is suited for the trail. It is suited for something that doesn't matter if it floods. And I think we need to look into that. Maybe we proceed cautiously with it. Maybe we don't spend a lot of money. We can do it in phases. But I think a central location, not only would we as residents, I certainly would enjoy going there. I think it would be an attraction for people to come and shop and spend a little bit more and stay longer. That would be my opinion.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, these two properties, it's been happening for 12 years, and hopefully, I don't know. But so I live very close to the uplands, and I use the trails in there to run on. It's 12 acres. I don't think anyone realizes it's 12 acres. But once you get in there, it really consumes you. The 290 sound just goes away. It's quite beautiful in there. So anything that gets developed on that property, I want to see very light touch. You know, maybe a better manicured trail, a very harmonious place for the farmers market to have a home, maybe one day for Arts Fest to have a home. I feel like what Uplands is to kind of the end of Sunset Trail, Reese, and Pillow, that's what Upper Cougar Creek is to the villas. It is this beautiful, peaceful place that is just outside their door, and so any development on that, they're very sensitive to. And so I think what we did most recently was said, let's do an ADA accessible trail. let's baby step our way into this and find the right size of development for that area. We've looked at legally the options that we can do on that land because there's some deed restrictions and there are environmental challenges to it. But again, it's a beautiful piece of property, and I think it's within our values to kind of respect that.
Thank you. Charles.
My wife and I recently hiked through the uplands, and I was surprised, as Rob said, how big it is and how nice it is. And I think I agree with both Rob and John that I would like to see some light development done there. I think that piece of property should no longer stay fallow. I know that the ad hoc committee has made some recommendations, including a pavilion for the farmers market, but let's take that one step at a time. And I don't think the development of both the uplands and Cougar Creek is either or. I think we can look at it and decide what our priorities are for the development of these two spaces and develop them both over time. I think maybe the ADA accessible trail around there is a good place to start. The floodplain, the floodplain mitigation is probably a good place to start. But I think the next council has to sit down and decide what are our priorities and what order do we want to do these things, working in conjunction with Public Works so that we all understand what can be done when and how.
Okay. Thank you. Karen.
So I agree. I don't think anything on the Parks and Open Space recommendations that will come before council is an either or. I think it's really good that we took this time to look at our whole city and put together options and focus areas. And now the next step is for council to adopt that and then look at those financial recommendations that are in that report, do a phased plan. We can do this here, and then we can do this here. That progress that people want to see, it's part of that planning, part of implementing that plan that we've paid for, and all of our citizens participated, and large part of our citizens participated in that. So let's get it adopted, let's move forward, and let's make something happen on all of those pieces at some point in time in an organized and logical way.
Thank you, Karen. Horacio?
I'm too new to Sunset Valley to know the biases that exist about one place or the other when it comes to the Uplands or to Upper Cougar Creek. But I've seen both properties, the question I ask myself is, what would make the most sense first? You know, it's how do you prioritize something like this? And I always tend to go for what's going to be of most benefit to most people. And when I think about the centrality of where Upper Cougar Creek is, centrality in terms of there is shopping, that there are some homes, and then there is this beautiful piece of land that can make a central point of connection for people. I think that makes for a good argument for why do we prioritize that one first. But I don't think it's to the exclusion of some of the other areas, and the Uplands is another one. So if I were to be asked today, where do you start? I would say my now newly formed bias is start with the Upper Cougar Creek because of those reasons.
Okay, thank you. Another draw. I'll do this one. Do the next one. Okay. Melissa Gonzalez? And we'll start the timer, Melissa. And if you could turn the mic on, thank you.
Well, okay. So I'm channeling John Belanca because you guys are talking too much wonk. And I want to see some distinguished features here. So John would always ask some question like, if you had $1 million, what would you spend it on? But I'm going to go further than that. I'm going to say, if you were an animal, tell me about your virtues and tell me about how, yeah, because I want something totally different. And tell me about what animal you are and how that relates to Sunset Valley. Like if you were to tell some story about it. Because really, I want to see some inventive artistic answers here. Thank you.
On that note, Rob, you get to go first.
Okay, I got as far as writing fox down. So if I was an animal living in Sunset Valley, I assume, I don't know, I'd probably be a fox. I tend towards being up at night. Many of you have gotten emails from me at 2 o'clock in the morning with just some thought while I'm sitting in my backyard. Luckily, many of you have silenced your phones because I also will send out text messages at 3:30. Wheels keep spinning. And also, there is this cute fox that always sets off our Ring doorbell at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so we get to see him or her every morning. And if I was a fox in Sunset Valley, I'd probably have pretty good luck at finding a snack in my backyard because I have 3 children who like to take snacks off into the backyard, and you never find them until, you know, the next day, and it's half eaten by some animal. And there's a lot of other fun creatures. There's a possum. We get an armadillo here and there. Plenty of deer. Tammy's backyard is wild, and there's always so many animals over there. So it seems like a nice party on our side of town.
10 seconds.
So that's it, a fox.
Okay, Charles?
So I was thinking about this, and I was kind of torn about what kind of animal I would want to be in Sunset Valley. And my first thought was a greyhound, because I've had greyhounds for 25 years or so. I had 8 in my life. Beautiful, magnificent creatures, great runners, intelligent, smart, far-seeing. But then I thought if I lived in Sunset Valley and I was an animal, I'd want to be a horse, because I think this would be the perfect place. When I was a kid, I had ponies when I lived in northern Minnesota. I think this would be the perfect place to be a horse. I mean, all the green space, all the places you can go, the wonderful, huge lots we have for a horse. I'd want to be a horse if I lived in Sunset Valley and I was an animal.
Thanks, Charles. Phil?
My answers changed as a result of this weekend. I watched it very interesting. Had I not watched this documentary over the weekend, I would have said that I'd like to be a dolphin, because I spent a lot of my time scuba diving, and I thought, the dolphin gets to do that every day. You know, but then it's an old saying, if it's Christmas every day, it's no longer Christmas, right? I mean, but then I watched this documentary called My Octopus Teacher, and if you haven't watched it, watch it. And I said, I wish I could strive to have the intelligence of that animal and be so adaptive and be so comfortable in its environment. That's what I learned from that show. So my answer, had this been Friday, would have been a dolphin. My answer today is, I got a lot of respect for that octopus. I really do, you know.
Rachel, you get to go.
I'm not good at this. I think we had a workshop at work one time, and I remember the lions, and I remember the other animal, but the one that I don't remember. But I'm going to make one up. I'll make up a bear. Why a bear? I think of bears as very protective of their young, but also very fierce when necessary. They're lovely to look at, but also scary at times. My wife tells me I can look scary at times. But yeah, so I think there is a lot in me that is very nurturing and caring and wants to be supportive. But I do also have, after I look into things, come up with opinions and ideas, and I put them out there, and I can be firm as well. So it's this confluence of 2 main things: the caring and nurturing, and the tough person combined into one.
Karen?
This is an interesting question for me, because I spent 42 years of my professional career working in animal welfare. So I could pick a lot of different animals, but an animal that I have actually had a out-of-body experience with was an eagle. And I relate to the eagle because the eagle can see far and wide, and the wind goes through its feathers, and they go on the currents. And so I really relate to the eagle because I always like to look at the big picture. And in Sunset Valley, I think it's important, as people get like one project or another that they attach themselves to, we're a whole community. And so I think it's really important, as the eagle, as I fly over Sunset Valley, is to see the whole city. So I'm an eagle.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mayor, you get to pick. Mark. Oh, he's done. We got your question. Okay. John Papalola. And yeah, if you could turn the mic on, thank you. And the clock is starting.
I think in a way you guys have all answered this question. Maybe I'll just make the statement, which is with regards to the mixed use question, I would definitely put myself in the category that it doesn't seem like the balance makes a lot of sense to add a substantial amount of residents given the way this space is situated in Austin. It's really so unique, the size of our lots, the quality of life that's here. It is special. So I guess I'll just make that statement. I think the only other the question I would have is sort of bouncing off that then. What are the limits to what the city can do with regard to the businesses, in your view? Because I hear from different prospective council members talk of planning, and the scope for that planning seems pretty limited to me. These are private properties. So the question is, how do you see the actual tangible role for planning at the city level relative to private development and private property?
Okay, thank you. And if you could turn the mic back off. Thank you. Charles, you get to start on this one.
With respect to the businesses themselves, of course there's a limited amount we can do. What we can do, however, is really kind of shape the environment that the businesses are in, with our zoning, with the kinds of things we want to do in the city itself, right? For example, the development on Upper Kruger Creek is something that is related to the businesses. We can set aside things like buffer space between our green space and the businesses, or our residences and the businesses. We can decide that we don't want mixed-use development. I believe that there's some actions that need to be taken in order for that to be able to happen for businesses to do that. We can control things like, for example, we've talked about dark skies. We have dark skies basically written into our comprehensive plan and our policies today. In 2019, the legislature passed some rules that kind of took away the ability to regulate your lighting from cities unless you are pursuing dark sky compliance. And things like dark sky compliance are, they're better lighting, especially with the technological changes we've seen in the last 10 years since we first wrote this into the thing. And that's something where we can work with the businesses and say, this is to your advantage, and we will work with you on this.
Okay. Phil.
It's a complex issue. Right over here, we have a $350 million business that doesn't report to us, that we can exercise minimum control over, yet we're dependent upon, to a large extent, for our revenue. And we can enforce that through land development code and land usage codes, and that's one we can do it. That can be punitive. I think the better way to do it is certainly keep those and enforce them and make sure they reflect our values. But I think at the other stage, we can positively engage those businesses as well. There's an entity over there in the market fair that's been buying up some of the property, and they're well-heeled. The last thing we want is to get into an expensive legal battle. We need to learn our lessons from what happened to the Lowe's, as an example. We should do a post-mortem on that. No one's to blame. It is what it is. We should learn from that and be aware of what can happen. The last thing I want to see is a legal battle. I do want to see enforcement of the Land Development Code, but I also want to have an engagement with this business that is $350 million that doesn't report to us. It's very difficult situation.
Okay, thanks. Rob?
Yeah, so the levers that we have coming up, the comprehensive plan dictating what we want to see in our city and the future land use map, those are important tools that we have to kind of say to those retail shopping centers, these are our values. Dark skies, it's a great point. Texas legislature opened that door for us to be able to say, these are our values, and as long as you say that you're pursuing it and finding the right size for you, then you can go ahead and work with the International Dark Skies Agency to kind of like put together what fits you best. These shopping centers are owned by multinational businesses, and they kind of they work up a lighting plan and they say, there you go, do it. And so that allows us to keep our foot in the door. For developers like DD Ty down on Brody and Townbridge, those are two situations where they respected our values and they worked with us to say, this is how far we're willing to go to be part of the Sunset Valley community. And I think it was important for us to give them a nice pat on the back and be like, welcome to Sunset Valley, because if you say no to everything, then someone's going to come in and litigate you to death.
We're done. Thank you. Karen.
So like has been mentioned, it's important for us to update our comprehensive plan and our land development code. Those are tools. There's some inconsistencies. They haven't been updated for over 10 years. So that's important. And the comp plan looks at 10 years out. So that's the vision for the comp plan, is 10 years. But the land development code and our building codes are all tools that we have. When we've talked to the shopping centers and actually communicated with them during the pandemic, and I was involved with some of those phone calls, the things that they really valued that were Sunset Valley, the police department was the top of the list. The ability to have different signage was important to them, but always the police department and the safety and the service that they get from the PD was at the top of their list. I think, Phil, you were in on some of those calls.
Yes, I will.
So those things are relationship building, and the communication is so key. We don't have a formal system to communicate with our not only the leasing agents, they change rapidly too, but the people who own the businesses and what's important to them. And so as we build that relationship and know who they are, I mean, even keeping the list of who's has a store and who's the contact person has been difficult for our city. So I think we're on the way to get that communication door open and work together.
Okay, thank you. Horacio?
Thank you for the question. I think you picked up on something that is very interesting, which is I believe there is a bifurcation that needs to happen. One is you have to consider a long-term strategy for what does it mean to have a business community in the city of Sunset Valley. That is something that is going to be guided by information from experts, values of the city, etc. And it's going to eventually reflect on those people that want to come in and build in here, whether it is that multi-use development or not, and it's going to have some boundaries around that. So that's more strategic long-term. Then there is a second part to this, which is more immediate, which is how do you do business with the people that are there today? How do you make sure that they have what they need? In CED, one of the things that we did during the pandemic was look to work with them to try to get some relief and council approve for them some money so that they could actually do payroll and help and get some help during the time where everybody was tight and constrained. So I think that is important, and that is something that we need to nurture and do on an ongoing basis, create the means to have our folks and our businesses talking together so that we can have a common understanding of how we both can win and partner. So two different paths.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a heads up, that's our last one of those. What we're going to do for the closing statements, we'll probably get 2 questions done, is we're going to start with the right side of the dais for the closing statements, just to give you a heads up, and then we'll come this way. Okay, who do we got? Randy.
You got it.
There you go.
Oh, am I?
Timer's on.
Couldn't see it. Thank you for being here and participating in this. I have going to give you an option of 2 questions, or you can answer them both.
Let's just go with one.
Just one?
Seriously, pick one.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Okay.
We'll be all over the place. One question, please.
Okay. I was just recently at the TML conference. Rudy attended, drove down there, had opportunity to have dinner with some of the people that attended that. And they said, oh, you're from Sunset Valley. Is your tax rate still at 6.25? I said, no. We're
up with Austin now at 8.25. Of course, that's, in my mind, as thinking back economically, that's a little bit of a disadvantage to our businesses. So I was just going to ask the question, at what level of reserves, and we have built up our reserves back above even what we had before we began the development of this facility here. What level of reserves would you see would be adequate before we could support, you would support cutting back some of the taxes that we collect from a sales basis? Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, thank you. And we begin with Phil.
I talked to some previous council members, and they came up with the idea of 12 months of reserves. And the reason, and it was not a lot of logic behind that, but there was a lot of, intelligent thinking. They said, if we lose a shopping center, a tornado or whatever, we should have 12 months on hand. And that felt very good. It was scary during the construction of the building. We took that down to 4.3 months. I would never advocate for that again. Now let's go back on cutting taxes. There's a saying in the industry I come from, prices are sticky downwards. Once you cut taxes, it's very difficult to raise them. It really is. So before we do that, or if we choose to do that, I would like to see some modeling done of what the impact would be, what the return could be on that. So I'm going to answer it two ways. First of all, 12 months I think is realistic. If it's 18 months and we can afford it and it doesn't, change the lifestyle, so much for the better. I think the logic of the people who came before us has said, plan for a tornado. Maybe you should ask the people in Fort Myers right now what they wish they had in reserves. And before we cut taxes, I like the idea of lower taxes, but we have to be very careful there. We have to do some very, very sophisticated modeling on that. If you get it wrong, it's tough to get out of that. It really is.
Thank you. Rob?
One of the reasons we have any money to spend on some more fun things is because when Rudy heard that we had 18 months she said, let's spend some money, and we all breathed a sigh of relief. So we have 18 months plus some. That 6.25%, I think the state takes 6, right? So that would give us a quarter. Sylvia, in one of our conversations, she said, you should be very careful at lowering it from the state maximum because other municipalities will start looking at the headroom or the wiggle room you have in there and start saying, well, we provide services. And she showed me an entire sheet of taxes that are levied across Travis County that could say, oh yeah, we do this, we do that, so we need a piece of that. And so it's unfortunately one of these situations where if we do not collect it, then the money just leaves and it's spent by other people. I will also say the Crime Control Prevention District, which raises, I should know this, I'm not going to guess, but it is in that 8.25% or is
10.
Sorry. Those crimes are being committed over there, so that tax is paying for issues that happen in our retail sector. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Charles?
Here we go. We've discussed this cutting taxes before. One of the ways we can cut taxes is to decide not to renew the crime control district tax or the venue tax or some of the other taxes. There doesn't appear to be any benefit to us for doing that, right? For example, if we cut the crime control tax, that's $475,000 of taxes we're no longer collecting. It's been suggested that cutting some of those taxes would improve sales because we were paying less tax here, or people coming in here pay less tax, but they'd have to buy $25 million more in sales to make up for losing that, and that's not very likely. As Rob said, right now we have over 18 months in reserves, and it is time for us to go and start investing in the city. And there are, at least to my knowledge, I don't think there are any good reasons why we would want to cut our taxes. We may as well stay at the state maximum like everyone else is at.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Horacio? Oops, there you go.
I always want to pay less taxes. However, I'm very curious, like I said earlier, and I think that one of the things that we would need to do is do an economic impact. Does a change in taxes lowering will have the effect that is going to be positive towards Sunset Valley? I think I would like to understand that before I actually can commit, my support for either being for or against it. So that's my view on that.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Yes, I mean, it's a complex issue. I think, first of all, the first question, 18 months is plenty. It puts us in a really good position as our reserve. And because we're in that position, we can utilize the sales tax income that we have and the money that we have over what we actually need to operate the city to invest back into our city and to make improvements into our city, to make it, a more happy place for shoppers to come. I mean, improving the shopping centers, providing some benefit to them, like when we did the grant process for them, and things that they might want that we could subsidize with them or partner with them to improve some of the look of the centers. Maybe it's the art on the electrical boxes. One of the centers is interested in doing that. Maybe we partner with them to do that. But we could lose the ability to do those things we've waited so long to do if we reduce the sales tax. And I wonder if we're doing better with sales tax revenue now than we did before the pandemic, how much would a reduction in the sales tax actually help the businesses? Is it hurting them? I don't know the answer to that question, and I think that's a question we would need to ask.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're close enough to 8:45 to begin with the closing statements, but if I can take a little privilege, Mark? Yes, the next question, I'm just going to put on the table for you all to think about. And the next question was going to be, please explain how you have fostered unity among residents in the past and how you propose to do it in the future. And I'll just leave that one on the table for you all to think about. We'll begin our closing statements. We got to set up for 2 minutes and 30 seconds here. And Karen, you get to start. We're going to start on that side.
Well, I think we've answered a lot of questions tonight. I think most of you have heard my experience with the city, my commitment to the city. Here, I'm going to continue to work to support the efforts in the city and to protect our environment and our way of life, whether I'm on council or not on council. I've done that for over 25 years, and I'll continue to do that. I could do more if I got your vote to be on council, to move things forward. So I would ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay. Arajo?
Yeah, I am just thankful for the opportunity to be here this evening and to have a chance to run. I come from a small country where there is a dictatorship, and, it's something special to be able to have the democracy that you have in the United States of America and to be able to participate and to help drive decisions and where a city and state and a country goes. That's just general. However, I bring a lot of different experiences that I think might be of value. I'm relatively new to Texas and Sunset Valley, but I do have a lot of professional experience in things like engineering, in things like operations, and lately, for the last 10 years, things like human resources and people. And I think when I combine all those, I get the ability to provide a lot of good questions, good insights, and help things move forward. One of the things that I like to call a motto is make it happen. It's about getting things done. And I think some of the things that I've heard today, some of the comments that I've heard from others is, let's make sure that we make progress on some of all these good ideas that have already been surfaced. So I would like to help make that happen with your support.
Okay. Thank you. Rob?
Tom says that he he doesn't want to do this anymore, but he's so good at it. So, you know,
Except for the timekeeping.
we worked it out. We rolled with it.
We got to get some new timers.
Yeah, except for the timekeeping, okay?
So
Sorry,
I
Tom.
wanted to thank everyone that came out. It's great to see so many lovely faces. We're going to have food with the next council, right? So, and everyone that asked questions, thank you so much. You know, we have 60 people that are involved in the committees. That's 10% of the population in Sunset Valley. If that was Austin, it would be 200,000 people on committees. What a great place that would be if 10% of the people that live there were as involved. This is a very consequential election. In the next year or so, council will pass the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. It also make progress towards implementing the Parks and Open Space Committee's recommendations. With these, Sunset Valley will decide what they want their city to be. In projects both big and small, I'm ready to serve the best interests of our residents. You'll go to the polls soon. I'd love to have your vote and the privilege of serving on the Sunset Valley City Council for another 2 years. If I didn't get a chance to answer your question tonight, please pick up a postcard over there. You can check out my website. It's www.rob.vote. Consider joining me for coffee Saturday, October 22nd at Stout House from 9 to 11 a.m. Good luck to all my fellow candidates, and thank you.
Thank you. Charles.
Sunset Valley is an oasis. We are very, very lucky to live here. And I think that we owe it to the people who made it what it is to protect, preserve, and enhancement for the people who come after us. Right now is a pivotal time in Sunset Valley. What we're going to do here is going to determine the future of Sunset Valley in an important way. When we talk about doing the comprehensive plan, when we talk about doing the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, when we work on the land development code, when we decide what kind of city we're going to be going into the future, we need to come together as a community to make this happen. And I think this is the time to make it happen. We have the money, we have the planning and experience to go ahead and do this. So I would like your vote to be on City Council to help make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Phil, you started, you can close it.
Thank you very much. I think what you heard tonight was unanimous from all of the people up here that we love the city. We love the fact that we're financially very strong. In my 45 years in the technology industry, and people say, did they have computers 45 years ago? Yes, it was called an abacus. And I ran in one person that really impressed me, the smartest guy I ever met, was a guy by the name of Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel. And he wrote a book, and it's called Only the Paranoid Survive. I don't like the word paranoid, but his message was always be prepared for what could happen. Always be looking over your shoulder. And success is also often fleeting. I think that came from a famous quote that was in, back in the Greek times. And we have to preserve that. We have to be observant. We have to be proactive. We have to continually look at the vitality of our business areas, which could change rapidly. No one predicted COVID and the impact that could have happened. We have to look at future developments, commercial developments, and we have to maintain our financial well-being. We have to keep looking over our shoulder to make sure we preserve those. They're complex. We heard that tonight. Managing a $350 million business here that we have no management control over is a complex issue. My background has been managing those issues. As complex as that may sound, I can assure you that dealing with the communist trade union in France is a little bit more difficult than that. So I think what I bring is experience. I have no problem making tough business decisions. And at the same time, I'm at this point in my life when I'm saying you have to do the right thing. We have an environment here we have to protect. We have to engage businesses proactively. And I, for one, don't think that the green environment is mutually exclusive to a vibrant business community. I think they can go hand in hand. So with saying that, I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to thank Tom for taking the time. I want to thank the mayor for being there. If there's questions I haven't answered, or questions you didn't get the chance to raise, or questions you think I didn't answer well, please contact me on my website. My mail address is phil@sunsetvalley.vote, and my website is sunsetvalley.vote. And please feel free to contact me on that. I'm normally pretty good at getting back on in a timely manner, as people have said in the past. But thank you. We love the city, and we have to do everything we can to make sure this continues.
Thanks, perfect. So on behalf of all the folks here and as a citizen of Sunset Valley, I want to thank you all for coming, both in person and everybody that attended online. And especially the folks that submitted questions, both for the floor and online. It was, we'll never get all those questions done, but we got halfway through them today, so that's a really good thing. Candidates, thank you very much. You were very well prepared, your responses were thoughtful, and that takes some work. Plus, you've been in those chairs for just about 2 hours. So we thank you very much for that. Mr. Mayor, thanks for doing a great job as mayor, and a great job doing the timing.
Round of applause for Tom and for the staff for
Good deal. Y'all, it is such a great place to be. Every day I walk out of our house, we're thankful we're in Sunset Valley. So thank you for all this hard work. Good job. Yeah, thank you. Pretty much fine. These were good. Look after yourself. And those were good. Look after yourself.